Welcome back in to another episode of The Locker Room. I'm your host, Will Kronsberg, this week joined again by Braden Maloy, and we are going to talk a little bit of Western Conference NBA basketball. And we start at the top. The Utah Jazz are leading the Western Conference, obviously the more loaded of the two conferences, but are the Jazz really the best team in the West compared to the Lakers, the Clippers, the Trailblazers, and so on, Braden?
I think at the moment they are. They're 23-5. They've won 19 out of their past 20 games, which is just ridiculous to have one loss there. They have 16 double-digit wins so far this season. That has not happened since the 2008 Cavaliers. So they are not even just winning, they are winning convincingly in these games. They have the best record in the NBA and sit atop the Western Conference. I think at the moment, the Jazz are clicking on all cylinders and the best team.
Well, absolutely. I mean, you saw them beat 76ers a few nights ago. Sixers, obviously the best team in the East. The Jazz are one of 8 teams in the West with a winning record, whereas there are only 4 in the East, so undeniably the stronger conference there. And you have guys like Jordan Clarkson, who on any given night might give you 40. Obviously, you have Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert as well. So definitely a strong squad. Now, we look a little bit further down at that second and that third spot in the West. You have a couple teams from LA. Which one are you liking more between that LeBron AD group with the Lakers and obviously the Kawhi and Paul George on the Clippers?
Like you said, when you keep looking at the West, they're much stronger than the East. Their top 3 teams, the Jazz, the Lakers, and the Clippers, all have better records than the 76ers who top the East. So it's just a strong conference. But if we're going to LA squads, I got to go with the Lakers. I think LeBron and AD and that team, they've proven it. They could done before. They did it last year. They have that depth that can keep them going. They won 7 straight games earlier this month. 3 of them were 3 straight overtime games. You need depth to win 3 straight overtime games. They had their bench players, they're scoring, Caruso, Harold, they're all coming off the back. They had a 20-point comeback earlier this month, so they know how to, if they get down, they can climb their way back in. Davis is out, though, for a week or so. So we'll see how that affects them this month. But I think when the season comes to the end, the squad will be back.
Well, you mentioned it. They had 3 straight overtime games. And with LeBron, you're talking about undeniably one of the greatest players we've ever seen, but a guy who's carried not just the Cavs, the Heat, and the Lakers over the past, decade and a half, but a guy who's carried probably the whole league as he came in right after Michael Jordan retired and has been billed as that next best thing ever since. He's 36 now. Is he sort of burning the candle at both ends? Are we testing him by not only giving him this compacted schedule due to COVID-19, but they're playing overtime every night, a lot of close games. Anthony Davis is out, and you only have a couple other guys, even in double figures on that team.
I think he's still going strong. Season 18, he's averaging 25 points a game. Just the other night, he had his 1,024th straight game scoring double-digit points. That blows second place Michael Jordan out of the water by 200 plus. He is still producing. Any given night, he'll give you 10 plus points. We've seen it, across all sports league, Russell Wilson, Tom Brady. These athletes have the money and the resources to dedicate the time and management to their bodies to allow them to keep producing at this high level. I don't see LeBron slowing down anytime soon.
Now, one more question I had with the Lakers. We've seen LeBron there for now his 3rd year. Anthony Davis has been there for 2 years. But their big offseason moves, they got the 2 guys who finished 1st and 2nd in 6th Man of the Year voting coming off of last year's shortened season, Dennis Schroeder and Montrezl Harrell. What impact have you seen from those 2 role players on the Lakers?
I think it's been huge. I think Harold has been a huge addition because they lost Howard. They lost their big rim protector. Harold's really a utility guy. He does all. He can rebound. He can guard the bigs. He can kind of get out on the perimeter. So I think that's big because if you take him out and AD is sitting on the bench getting minutes, they're not that big. They're a small lineup. So I think the addition of Harold allows them to kind of rest AD, keep him fresh throughout the game, throughout the season, and still be fine on the court. And then Schroeder as a point guard, he can run the floor whenever he's out there. He did it when he was with the Hawks. He's doing it now with the Lakers. I think that's huge. He knows how to run the floor and get people open.
Now, I want to shift gears here for a second. We talk about LeBron and everything he did coming out of that 2003 draft. Another top pick in that draft was Carmelo Anthony. He's been around a couple teams, the Nuggets, the Knicks, the Rockets. Now he's on the Portland Trail Blazers. And the Trailblazers are making a little bit of a resurgence. They have Melo coming off that bench, and they have Damian Lillard, who's obviously the star of the team. So do you think that the Trailblazers can make a little bit further of a run as compared to past years?
I think they can. It is Dame time at the moment. Dame time and Hoodie Melo are coming out. They've won 5 straight games, 7 of their last 8. They have a 17-10 record, which is 4th best in the West. They're sitting prime. Dame's averaging 29 points a game. Melo's looking like Nuggets Melo. I think in a strong Western Conference, they're going to be a team that will battle. There'll be a tough test for anybody in the first, second, and maybe championship round.
Sure, and then one more team I want to look at is the Suns. We saw the Suns make a run when we went to the bubble last year. They won 8 consecutive games, but they fell just short of playoff contention because they hadn't really built up that strength when the season was cut short in March. But they're still at it this year. They're very much in playoff contention, tied for 4th place in the West. Devin Booker looks really strong, and you have that veteran leadership with Chris Paul. Do you like the Suns to potentially go further than they could last year?
I don't think so. I don't see it happening. They're playing great ball. Chris Paul, we talk about LeBron and his age. Chris Paul's been there for forever too, and he's still going strong. Maybe not as dominant, but that leadership is allowing him to take over on the court. And Booker, perennial all-star, the young guy coming into the league. I just don't think they have the weapons and firepower, especially on defensive side of the ball, to slow down a team like the Lakers or the Clippers or the Jazz in that point. So I don't see them making a deep run this year.
Now, we've talked about a lot of the good teams in the West. Can you tell me about a team that's maybe disappointed you? The Suns are overperforming. Which team do you think is underperforming?
I think you got to look at the Dallas Mavericks. That's kind of the obvious team that everybody's been looking at. They came in with the hype. They got the Porzingis and Luka Doncic, who's kind of becoming one of the new faces of the league. Yet they have not been able to put it together. They're struggling to get wins. They're struggling to get points, make stops on defense. Right now, they might not even make the playoffs. They've been going back and forth between that 8 spot and out of it for the entire year. And it's been interesting to watch how they haven't really been able to look like a solid team.
Yeah, I was going to highlight the Mavericks as well. You have 2 of the most prolific European stars that we've seen come overseas in recent years. Kristaps Porzingis has had his issues when he left New York, and he just hasn't been that same caliber of player in Dallas. Luka is definitely carrying the team, but it just doesn't seem to be enough right now. One team that I also wanted to highlight is the Pelicans. There was a lot of hype coming into last year. They had that first overall pick, Zion Williamson, who's still as electric a player as ever, and pair him with a fellow former Duke player, Brandon Ingram. They're both around that 24-point mark per night, but you have Lonzo Ball, who's supposed to be the point guard on that team, and they're not at the pace that I think a lot of New Orleans fans expected. Now, I want to shift gears here to individual players. Talk about some of your best MVP candidates in the Western Conference.
Well, I got 3 of my top 5 MVP candidates come from the Western Conference. We have LeBron James, like we talked about earlier. Year 18, and he's still doing what he's doing, averaging 25 points a game, leading that squad that is full of a lot of young players. And he's just being dominant as he has ever been. Jokic with the Nuggets. The Nuggets, they're win-wise and team-wise, it's kind of in the middle of the pack. They're not quite the dominant force yet, but he's getting 27, 8, and 11 a game. And that's such a solid stat line for especially a big nowadays in the game of NBA for him to still be producing like that. And then my man Steph Curry. I know the Warriors, they've been riddled with injuries. Clay's back again. They're 2 years removed from KD leaving. So they've been kind of a little bit of rebuilding, but Curry's putting on a show. He's matching numbers he had in his unanimous MVP season back in 15-16. They are a fun team to watch just because Curry can go off at any night.
Sure. Curry is definitely electric. We see that he, even with that injury last year, didn't fall off. I'm going to throw in one more name for you real quick. Luka. We talked about the Mavericks have been struggling, but Luka Doncic is definitely carrying that team, really reaching career highs almost every night, it seems like. So when you talk about most valuable, the Mavericks would be in the middle of nowhere without him. And that'll do it For us on this week's edition of The Locker Room, for Braden Maloy, I'm Will Kronsberg. Thank you so much.